Good morning. Today we're going to look at the importance of using a key and the importance of developing your own key if necessary. First off, you need to understand what the point of the key is and what the functions are. There are two parts of the key. There are the bullets or bullet points and there are the signifiers. The function of a bullet is to give everything a category. So it's essentially a filing system. Everything that you write down in your bullet journal will have a bullet point. Signifiers are for prioritization. They are meant to allow certain bullet points to stand out. So, for instance, if you take the basic bullet points, the task, the event, or the note, any one of those three could be important. And the signifier that you use for importance is a star. So not every bullet point will have a star, but everything that's on your list will have a bullet point. Okay? If you are new to bullet journaling, new to using bullet points, you may find this a little tricky to get used to at the beginning. I've had a few people say the biggest problem I've had is trying to remember what bullet point to put next to things. Okay, so there's two parts to that. First off, if you're new to it, expect to have a learning curve. You don't buy a new car and immediately know where the wipers and lights are. It takes you a couple of drivings or a couple of uses of them to remember. And frankly, the amount of times we have fog, I have a car I've had for 3.5 years and I still have to look for the fog lights if it's foggy. So it takes a little while to get used to where things are. You've got to understand that and you've got to allow yourself time to learn. Don't expect to just jump in with both feet. Here's a quick way of learning your basic key if you are new and you're struggling with the concept. Take a post-it note and you're going to write upside down. So you're going to put the sticky bit of the post-it note at the bottom. And you're going to write large on your post-it note with a pen that works, preferably. I'm sure I've got one here somewhere. There we go. Make it a nice big thick chunky pen and you're going to write on it the dot, task, the circle, event, the line, notes, and then over here I'm going to put a star, VIP. Okay, so that's a simple visual reminder that you use tasks, events and notes, and when they're very important you put a star next to them. Simple, easy to see. Now here you can put this on your page. But why is it upside down? Is this like some kind of Jedi mind trick where if it's upside down you remember it better or something? Well, no, it's simple. You take your post-it off the page and you put it at the top of your book like that, and then when you're flipping through you can still see what your key is and you can mark things off accordingly. Ta-da! Super simple, super easy to do. You just pop it on your page and move it up to the top of the page when you think you're going to need it. Eventually this will become second nature and you can move on to more complex bullet points. If you are an old hand at bullet points, the problem may not be that you're learning how to use bullet points. The problem may be that your brain is going, but that doesn't feel right. That's the problem I have. Originally, the original bullet journal system used tasks, were squares. And you put the square and you crossed it off or whatever it was you wanted to do. And somewhere along the line, someone, and I cannot remember who it was, I think it might have been Tiny Ray of Sunshine, but I apologise if that's not right. Someone came up with this idea of using a bullet point. bullet point, bullet journal, makes sense. But then they said, well, the functionality of this dot is that instead of having a square that gets more and more complex depending on what you're writing in it, you literally have something that you can change at will. So a dot can become any number of things. You can mark it as complete. You can forward it to another page or send it back to another page. You can give it to somebody else and then forward it when it's complete. You can put it on hold and then cross it off when it's done or no longer relevant. All of this means that you're not making a big mess in your bullet journal. And Ryder loved this idea and adopted it for his second version when he redid all his videos and stuff for kind of the second launch, as it were. He adopted that because he loved it. And I can see why he loved it. It's slick, it's simple, it's easy to do, etc. But for me, squares with ticks in them and crosses in them are now, and forever will be, tasks. It's ingrained in my head because for the 40 plus years that I've been writing lists of things to do, I've used checkboxes. Add to that the fact that in the UK we have this thing called death by bullet point, which is basically every teacher in the country, regardless of how inept they are with a computer, knows how to use PowerPoint, and they're not afraid to use it a lot. They all know how to use bullet points, and the way our bullet points are structured, you get used to a certain type of bullet point. So for me, bullet points are notes. They always have been. So this, for me, is a note. Now, if you've been using the bullet point system for a few days and you're struggling with it, that could be your problem. But don't come to the bullet point system and say, oh, this is never going to work for me. I'm going to do it my way. That is a road to disaster. I have tried the bullet point system before. So when I started this journal, I already knew that using dots for tasks was not going to work. I've tried it before. I tried very hard with it. I could not wrap my head around it. And the reason I couldn't is because it didn't feel natural. I was constantly writing a box and then I'd end up whiting it out and putting a dot. That is what Ryder refers to as friction. Now, the whole point of bullet points is to make rapid logging quicker. So you don't have to read the entire longhand version of a note to understand that it is a note. You don't have to read the entire longhand version of a task in order to understand that it's a to-do. He has examples of this early on in the book where he shows you a rapid log versus a normal log that people tend to use. Here it is, page 60. So the traditional, this is what we do, and the rapid log. Now, of course, the rapid log looks lovely and clean with these little dots, but I can't function like that. I'm sorry, that just doesn't work for me. Every time I put a task, I put a square, and then I immediately think, oh, that should have been a bullet point. The same with bullet points. Instead of, when I write notes, I don't use lines. Although the way he describes notes, I do use them correctly. But if I have an event and then I want to put information underneath it, I will use lines. But if I have a note straight off on its own, I will use a bullet point. So my key is completely different, slightly different. It's not completely different, it's slightly different. The whole point of using a key in the first place is it's fast, it's functional, and it reduces the number of decisions you have to make. If one of those decisions, and I use the word decisions loosely, but if one of those decisions you have to make is, oh, am I using my squares that I normally use, or am I using something else, then that's going to slow you down. If after a few days it hasn't naturally become, oh no, today we're using bullet points for tasks, and then you write your list, then you might want to consider going back to squares, which is what I've done. I just cannot get my brain to understand, even if I can get my brain to write tasks with a dot, when I come back to it, I look at them and I don't recognise them as tasks. And that is an issue for me. That means they're not functional. Also means they're not natural. So if you naturally put a dot next to notes like I do, or you naturally use squares for tasks, or you naturally use a triangle for your events, then stick with that if you can't function the way the bullet journal says you can. But don't make your bullet point system so complicated that you can't even remember it. If you already have a really complex system and it's second nature to you, and that's how you function, and that's what you prefer, then by all means use it. But if it's slowing you down, or it feels wrong, or you have to keep going back and referring to a key after a couple of times of using it, then it's way too complex and nobody's got time for that. I have changed my key, and this is what I've done. Now, I'm not saying anybody should use my key. I'm just showing you how my key is slightly different. So what I've done with my key is I've split it into bullet points and signifiers. So the bullet points are in one column and the signifiers are the ones on the left. The signifiers haven't really changed very much. My tasks, tasks started, task complete, task migrated, and so on, are different, but they adhere to the original bullet point system, because to me that made sense. So an empty box is a task, a half-filled box is a task that's in progress, a fill box is a task that's completed. If I need to migrate a task, I put an arrow next to it, and when I've migrated it, I colour in the box. If a task is cancelled, I cross it through, and then I put a line through the actual information. If something's important, I put a star next to it. I use dots for notes. I am using circles for events. Circles for events that are incomplete or future events are open circles, and closed circles are ones that are finished or completed. Because for me, it just helps to be able to see the black bits means that that's done. It's over with. And it's a quick way of looking through it and scanning through and going, oh, I haven't finished that yet. I've also added a couple of extra signifiers, not bullet points. Now, he does suggest that you add a couple of custom bullet points if you have something regular. So, for instance, if you have, I think the one he used was football practice, American football practice. In the UK, we call it rugby. Football practice, he says you could perhaps use an H for football practice if that's something that you regularly do, because it looks like the H frame of the football goals. That makes perfect sense. There's also things like triangles. You could use a triangle for, I don't know, perhaps you work shifts, you work irregular hours, you work on call. You could put a triangle for signifying when you're working away from home, or you're going out on a call or something like that. Whatever it is that's useful to you. What's useful for me is having extra notes signifiers, because I'm a writer. I write things down constantly. So I have 3 signifiers. A plus sign next to any of these means that it's got more information. So if a task requires notes, I will put the notes usually somewhere else, or the notes will already be somewhere and I will have a task. So for instance, notes on this video and then the task. So the task is record the video, but the notes for the video may be on a previous page. So I put the page number and a plus sign to indicate there's more to see here. I also use a star with a circle around it, which has always been something I've done for things that are like, aha, ding, light bulb. So this is like major breakthroughs, something that's like, oh, wow, I get it. You know, wow, this is something I need to remember. So my aha moments, circles with a star, because it's important and it's an event. And an important event is like, whoa, aha, I get it. See, there's method in my madness. And then the last one I use is things that are something I need to change, review, look at, and a possible idea that I want to explore. Basically something I need to work on more before I can do anything with it. The reason that's a signifier and not a task, not a bullet, is because you could have journal notes, you could have events, you could have notes, you could have tasks, all of which might need some kind of further development that you haven't done yet. If you've already done the development, then you've got the plus sign with the circle. If you have, and the page number. If you haven't done it yet, you need to make sure you do that. And the sign for change is a triangle. I don't know where I learnt that, but I know that an upside down triangle means because, and triangle the right way up means change or therefore, which leads to. So it's you're moving on to something new. When I've reviewed that item or developed it further or whatever, I will mark the triangle as complete, and then I will put a plus sign next to it with the page number for any notes that go with it if I've got them. And that's it. That is my entire key. So all I've done is added these extra 3 signifiers and how I use them. Plus, for journal notes, because I do journal in my bullet journal, so if it's a note, it's just like, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but, you know, it might be information about how your camera, for instance, your camera information. That would be a note. Whereas what I did this morning and making a note of, oh, I went and did some painting and such, that would be a journal entry. So I put the time of the journal entry and I put a box around it so that it stands out. Simple as that. So that's my key that I'm using, and so far it's working like a dream. The only one I have trouble with is remembering to put a plus sign next to things that have further development. I tend to do that when I'm reviewing, and I'm finding that bullet points are what you use when you first write things down, your rapid log, and your signifiers are what you use afterwards when you review them or reflect on them. I've found it very useful to think of those in 2 different terms. When you're using bullet points, you need to remember the concept that they are supposed to reduce the amount of friction between your thoughts and putting them on the page. If you can look at something and immediately understand that that's something you need to do, or that's just an event, you can ignore it for now, or that's just a note, you can look at it later, then you will find that you can rapid log that much quicker. The more complex you make your system, the more friction you put into the system, and the more it will slow you down. And the more it will just become a to-do list. The other thing I would say about keys is don't mark everything as a to-do. If you put something on your list today that you don't know when you're going to do it, but you know it's something you need to do, don't put it as a task today. Make a note of it. I found that really, really useful because tasks for me are things that I need to do today. A note would be, need to call mum. I need to call my mum, but I don't know when I'm going to do it. I haven't sorted out what I want to talk to her about, whatever, you know. So I can put it on my list today. It's something on my mind. Note, call mum. I don't have to do it right now. I don't have to do it today. But when I do my reflection this evening, I'll see that note that says call mum and I'll go, oh, I'll do that at the weekend. And then I can put Sunday afternoon next to it. And every time I go back and review and reflect and check through my list and go, have I done everything? I'll see that saying Sunday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, Sunday afternoon. And when I get to Sunday morning, I'll review and I go, oh yeah, Sunday afternoon, call mum. I'll put that on the list and it becomes a task. So that's how I've avoided having reams and reams and reams of tasks. Just write things as notes if they're not due immediately. Unless, of course, it's something really important. If you have to make a phone call that is super important, absolutely put it as a task and put a star next to it and write in big capital letters, do this tomorrow, if that's what you need to do to make sure that you do it. And then when you reflect, you can migrate that onto tomorrow's things. So when you reflect tonight, you'll look at it and go, oh, I've got a really important task I need to do tomorrow. Okay, that's okay. I've got it written down, so I'll remember, I'll know that I need to do it in the morning. And then when you do your morning reflection, you'll look at it and go, oh, hang on a minute, I need to do that today. I'll put that on my task list today. You're basically retraining your brain to think of things as symbols instead of having to read what you've put. Now, other things that I've done, and I've talked about this previously, I'm dyslexic and I find it very easy to misread things or not note things, or I'm a bit lazy actually, and I tend not to read. I look for pictures, and I've always done that. I've always drawn little pictures next to things, and when I discovered planner stickers, I went, yay, I don't have to draw little pictures anymore. So I've started putting signifiers on some of my pages. Here's an example of one. So this symbol up here is the diary symbol. That's what I've used for both of my monthly pages. Both of my monthly pages have diary stickers on. I used a little star sparkly symbol for lither. We had a super hot day out of nowhere, 30 degrees, so I put a little sunshine symbol next to it. This is my June reflection, my monthly reflection. So at the end of June, when I did my migrations, I did an overall reflection on June. And I put a pair of glasses next to it because I couldn't find anything that was a mirror. But glasses, you know, glasses reflect, don't they? So, yeah, that works. And then my current read for the month, I put a book sign next to it so that it stands out. It's easy to see. Now, you don't want to go overboard with these things. Another thing I'm doing is, oh, I've missed that off my signifiers, actually. If a task, event, or a bullet is for my witchy stuff, then I put a star next to it because pentagrams are stars and that's witchy stuff, right? Makes sense to me. It's not on my list. I should put that on my signifier. So that should be on here. Star. Witchy stuff. And of course that could be a task, an event, a note, a journal entry, whatever. I've also got various places where I've used little tiny diary stickers. Not many, as you can see. Oh, my post, I've got a red letterbox. My stars, well, look, I just told you what my stars are. My stars mean they're witchy stuff. So this is my astrology. Oh, I've used a heart. One of the things that he talks about is having a passion project every month. Something quick and easy that you can learn in a month or you can address in a month that is interesting to do and fun to do and makes you feel like you're achieving your goals. Or is achieving your goals. Either works. So, of course, my passion project for the month is One Book July, the bullet journal method. So anything in here that is One Book July or the bullet journal method has a little heart next to it. Next month, my passion project is going to be something different, and anything with that information is going to have a little heart next to it. I might use a different colour heart. Who knows? I've also put a couple of, I don't know if I can find one offhand, but I've put a couple of journal entries in where I've used a little planner sticker next to it to give an indication of what the journal entry is without actually having to read the journal entry. I can't find one right now, but you get the idea. So if this note here was about the dogs, say, I might put a little dog or bone sticker next to it, just so I can see really quickly without having to read it what that note is about. But the way my brain works, if it's in colour, I can ignore it. I can literally skip over it. Everything I do that's not in colour is in black, except for the little stickers at the top. Some of these are in colour, but they're in colour for a reason. So these are idea stickers. The red letterbox is important stuff that stands out because it's red. The Urban Sketchers one is a little house, and it's a personal thing, so it's blue. That's just for me because I find that easier to do. You absolutely don't have to do that. There is no reason that your bullet journal can't be completely black and white, or there's no reason you couldn't use different coloured highlighters if that's what you prefer to do. I know a lot of people use friction highlighters to indicate important stuff, and then they erase it when it's no longer important or no longer relevant. And I used to do that myself. The only reason I'm not doing it at the moment is because I'm really lazy and I don't want to carry more than one pen around with me. One pen, 1 month. I don't really feel the need to use highlighters because I've got 4 colours in my pen. I do use my 4 colours in my pen. It's a very rudimentary form of colour coding. Red is for passion. That's my passion project notes. Green is environmentally friendly. That's my witchy notes. And blue is my colour because I'm a Ravenclaw. So that's personal notes and journaling. So anything you see in here that has coloured notes on it, so this, for instance, has been highlighted in blue, that means it's personal journaling. This has been highlighted in green, that means it's witchy journaling. My astrology notes have green writing all over them because I went back and worked on some of it and added additional notes. And that's purely for me. You could do it all in black. I could do it all in black. But for me, I like to see what I wrote down first and then things that I've added afterwards. What are revisions and what I originally started with. So here's a bullet journal method page, and it's got red notes for stuff that I've added on that's extra. And for me, that helps me see that those are changes that I've made rather than having to put boxes around them or highlight them or anything like that. So I hope that's been useful for you. If you are struggling with the bullet point key, remember, if you're new to it and you don't usually use bullet points, you have to learn how to use them first. So write them down and use them on a post-it note so they're easy to get to. And if they don't feel natural to you after a while, by all means, change them to something that does. But don't go overboard, because if you've got more than about 10 or so, I would say if you've got more than about 5 bullet points and 5 signifiers, you're getting way too complex and you need to ease off the accelerator just a tiny bit.